Hello, children. After a long break, let's start this new academic year with super energy and excitement. Children, in this video lecture, I will explain poem 1 of Hornbill textbook. Poem 1 is a photograph written by Shirley Tolson. Let's know more about the poet. Shirley Tolson, obituary, was born on 20th May 1924 in England. She died at the age of 94 on 15th May 2014. She had a huge passion on writing and was greatly influenced by her father, who was a writer too. She was a poet, teacher, educational journalist, and editor, and the author of books about walks along the ancient tracks and roads of Britain. She took writing as career, but also served as the editor for many magazines. Her notable works are Shadows in an Orchard, For a Double Time, and The Divorce. Let's know more about the poem. Not much is known about the publication history of a photograph. Despite the poem being one of her best ones, the poem is a tender yet a jolting piece that revolves around the universal theme of loss and separation, an inevitable reality that is a common lot of mankind. Through this stock symbol of photograph recalled in many literary pieces to denote nostalgia and remembrance. The poet articulates the emptiness she feels upon having made uncomfortable peace with her mother's death. The poem is tender because of the heart touching manner in which it has expressed nostalgia born of loss to the passage of time and the final rest. The shaking aspect comes from harsh message it sends across about how humans can never be entirely talented at accepting irreversible separation from a loved one. In this poem, the poet recalls her mother and her memories while looking at a childhood photograph of her mother. She remembered an embodiment of time and timelessness. We are acquainted here about loss, pain, and separation. She remembered her mother's childhood and happy days as well as the absence of her mother in her life, which has made her life a gloomy one. Let's know more about setting of the poem. This poem is set in the memories of two women, the poet and her mother. The mother's memory is in the form of the photograph that is referred to in the title of the poem. She misses her past as a little girl, visiting the beach with her other cousins. On the other hand, the poet's memory is that of her mother who has passed away. She remembers how her mother would look at old photographs to cheer herself up. In both cases, the women grieve for the past that they have lost. Let's know more about the central idea of the poem. The poet gave a tribute to her mother through this poem, a photograph. The poem describes three stages in the passage of time. In the first stage, the photograph shows the poet's mother standing at the beach enjoying her holiday with her two girl cousins. She was around 12 years old at that time. The second stage, taken us 20 to 30 years later, the mother would laugh at the way she and her cousins were dressed up for the beach holiday. In the third stage, the poet remembered the mother with a heavy heart. The photograph revived the nostalgic feeling in the past. Let's start an explanation with the paraphrase of the poem. I will read first stanza and then I will read paragraph and I'll explain you the lines. Children, our stanza 1 is: the cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. An old photograph of the poet's mother, which was pasted on cardboard, makes the poet recall the old memories of her mother's childhood. The photograph is a portrayal of her mother's enjoyable moments at a sea beach with her two cousins, who were younger to her. They were walking in shallow water with bare feet near the beach. The mother was standing in the middle and holding hands of her two cousins, who were standing on each side. The poet's mother was 12 years old then. It shows that the photograph was very old, but the poet has kept it very carefully as it reminded her of sweet memories of her mother's childhood. The photograph also indicates how enjoyable her mother's childhood was. The cardboard here refers to the thick, stiff photo used in the pre digital photography era to develop prints and store memories. It is interesting to note that instead of writing about memories about her mother directly, the poet takes help of prop of a photograph to convey the readers that she is thinking back about her mother. Think about it, children. When you miss a certain person or time of our life, what we do? It is a human tendency that we revisit old pictures of that particular time. Photographs are beautiful aids of nostalgia because each picture, no matter how candid or natural or well framed, has a story to tell. Shirley Tolson here shares with us the story behind the picture. She is holding in her hands, taking us with the time when her deceased mother had gone to the beach with her two younger cousins. The poet's mother and her two cousins are on the beach. They were walking in shallow water. Each of cousin was holding the hands of poet's mother, showing their joyous mood. The poet's mother was elder one amongst the depicts the loving and caring nature of her who had hold the hands of both the cousins and spending enjoyable moments with them. The poet had carefully set the opening lines of the poem. She had set the mood and tone of the poem by indicating her mother's age and childhood memories, which contrasted in the last lines, and its overcharging subject of losing a mother. Children, here I have given meaning for you also. Let's see now our stanza 2. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. The photograph shows that all three girls, the poet's mother and her two cousins, stood still and smiled at the camera when their uncle clicked their photograph at the sea beach. As the weather was windy at that time, their hair was flying over their smiling faces. The expression on the faces of the poet's mother and her cousins was that of happiness and enjoyment. The mother was looking very pretty at that time, and the photograph was taken a long time ago. Everything has changed since then. Her mother grew up. Now she was dead, and the poet was reviving her memories. The only thing that she remained unchanged is the sea, which was washing the feet of all three girls. The mention of the word transient indicates the ever changing lives of human beings as well as the shortness of their stay on this world. In contrast to the eternality of nature, the girl's life changed drastically during this period, but the sea has not changed. The stanza beautifully explains the transient nature of human beings. The camera here, an interesting tool of nostalgia or remembrance, used to always provide food for her fond remembrance by means of pictures. Through their hair is an expression used to denote how three girls are smiling their widest smile, a smile so broadly spread across their faces that it seems to reach the strands or seashore, and their hair falling on their sides. She describes her mother's face as one full of sweetness, instantly drawing tender and kind emotions from the readers due to the beautiful way in which the poet likes to think of her mother from the time when she herself had not come into her life. Through the words "before I was born," the poet draws a distance between herself and her mother, which in the second sentence is not a painful one. However, this distance takes on a woeful note once we discover later in the poem that the poet has lost her mother. After appreciating the sweetness that defines her mother's youthful face, Shelley shifts her poetic gaze onto the sea and casually remarks on how the endless water body was not changed much over time. Thus, the sea here symbolizes ever and all time existence against the infinite vastness of which human lives appear even more vanishing or fading in comparison. This short term human life is touched upon further when the poet mentions how the sea washed the three sisters' terribly transient feet, temporary feet. The words transient feet exemplify the literary device of transferred epithet where a noun is made to take on the attribute of the human. The noun is associated to. Over here, the girls' feet are called transient because it is their own lives that are temporary. Due to the universal reality that everything soul has a shelf life with its time cut out on earth, a reality that reduces human to a transient presence in this world. Children, now understand stanza 3. Some 20-30 years later, she had laughed at this snapshot. "See Betty and Donny," she had said, "and look how they dressed us for the beach." The sea holiday was her past minus her laughter, both wry with the labor as of loss. Even 20, 30 years later, the mother would look at the photograph and laugh nostalgically, remembering the happy memories of her past. Mother would look at the photograph and comment on the dresses worn by the cousins, Dolly, Betty, and herself. See, holiday was her mother's past, and her mother's laughter has become a thing of the past for the poet, as her mother was now dead. The poet still remembers how her mother would laugh at the photograph, remembering the sea holiday with a fondness as well as a sense of loss, because that time would never come back. In the same way, poet feels nostalgic thinking about her mother and her laughter, which has become a thing of the past. The words labored and s are opposite to each other, but describe the same entity, loss. Children, in these lines, the poet remembers fondly how her mother would laugh at the probably hilarious way in which she and her sisters had been dressed for the beach. This seemingly casual laughter has meaning if we look below the surface. When we grow older and are made to become mature and serious over time, we often outgrow an youthful care that could once be felt towards small little things like a visit to the beach, and how even such small events were accompanied with efforts to dress up and took the part. This casual remark of the mother that the poet shares with us encourages the underlying current of recollection over things lost of time that binds the whole poem together. When the poet draws the contrast between the two past, this poem hopes between one of the mothers and one of Shirley's. The mother's past was represented in the photograph, representing her youthful happy days, while the poet's past comprises a time when she had her mother's laughter that would brighten up the days. It is interesting to note here how both pasts presented in the poem have laughter and happiness in them, which serves to confirm the theme of loss that is then presented in the next sentence. Both rhyme with the labeled as of loss. This is indeed a beautiful choice of words. Labeled as is an oxymoron speech, which represents both opposite things together here. The difficulty and struggle one has to go through to arrive at the point where accepting loss and death becomes possible and a part of our daily possible lives. It is this labored as that turns even the happiest laughter filled memories wry by tinging them with emotions of pain and loss. Now, stanza 4, children. Now, she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. And of this circumstance, there is nothing to say at all. Its silences. The poet recalls that it is nearly 12 years since her mother died. The poet is consumed with grief but is left with no words to express her loss and pain. The poet is totally engrossed in memories of her dead mother. The painful silence of this situation leaves the poet speechless. The poet can feel the grief but is unable to express it through words. The silence caused by death makes the atmosphere gloomy, where no one is able to utter words. In this stanza, the poet finally reveals that the subject of the photograph she is holding, her mother, has been dead for about 12 years, the same age she was when the photograph had been taken. This painful universal circumstance of loss or to death that all humans regularly experience in their lives has provided no words to the same poet who was so far being so articulate about the smallest of details in the picture. The poet is speechless because once a daughter has lost her mother to death, there is nothing that can be said about a loss so deep, a pain so grave. What this sentence implies is that even the best of poets sometimes fail to give exact expression to such cruel pain, brutal pain, because of how deep it goes inside the human psyche. Its presence too, all encompassing and profound at the same time to be conveyed in words. Hence, the best way the poet can do justice to this pain is by saying that its silence silences, meaning it's a loss that sometimes even fails her poetic pen when she tries to write about it. This is because the dictionary probably does not have words enough to lend proper expression to such pain. And then, like the poet, one has to take resort in sentimentality and fond memories of the past to soothe their hurtling self. And the silence makes such recollection a habit more than an act of remembering something that the poet earlier hints at through the words labor as. Through this summary of the poem A Photograph, I hope you easily understood how the poet has tried to keep her mother alive in her memories by taking help of the memories her mother wished to keep alive from her youthful days. This memory within a memory expressed in a beautiful way to strengthen the theme of a remembrance that takes on a painful turn when the poet has to once again comes to terms with the fact that her mother, the younger smiling in the picture, has gone. Children, here I have given with an introduction, textual question answer, textual exercise for your reference. You need to learn all these question answers and you have to write in fair notebook. This all you have to write. Please write these question answers as well as given meanings. Both are important for learning purposes, for examination purpose. So write it down. Learn well. Thank you.